The diamond caught the light as Will slipped the ring onto my finger, and for one perfect moment, everything felt right. Then I heard my mother's sharp intake of breath, the kind that always preceded her most cutting remarks. I'm Alea, and this is the story of how I burned my own wedding to the ground. It's quaint, my mother said, examining the ring with the same expression she used for examining bargain bin items. Though I suppose that's part of its charm. Will's smile faltered slightly, but he kept his composure. I squeezed his hand under the table, our silent signal that meant ignore her. We'd perfected that gesture over the past year. Actually, Mum, Will designed it himself, I said, my voice steady despite the familiar burn of anger rising in my chest. He worked with a local artisan. How creative, she replied, sipping her wine. The restaurant's soft lighting couldn't hide her disapproval. Though I do hope you kept the receipt, dear. Family heirlooms have such significance after all. My father cleared his throat awkwardly, studying his menu as if it held the secrets of the universe. Typical dad, always diving for cover when Mum started her psychological warfare. I love it exactly as it is, I said firmly. It's perfect. Will's thumb traced circles on my palm, and I felt my tension ease slightly. That's what I loved about him. He could calm storms with a touch. Well, my mother continued, setting down her glass with precision. When shall we start planning? The country club has an 18-month waiting list, but I'm sure I can pull some strings. The Andersons' daughter had such a lovely wedding there last spring. Actually, Will spoke up, his voice warm and confident, we were thinking of having it at my parents' restaurant. They've got this beautiful garden space. A restaurant? My mother's perfectly plucked eyebrows shot up. Darling, you can't be serious. What would people think? They'd think it's authentic and meaningful, I cut in. Will's family built that place from nothing. It means something. From nothing is precisely my concern, she muttered, just loud enough to hear. The waiter arrived with our appetizers, providing a brief respite from the tension. I watched as my mother arranged her salad leaves with surgical precision, a habit she'd had since I was little. Every time I'd reached across the table as a child, she'd slap my hand away. A lady never stretches, she'd say. You know, Mrs. Warner, Will said, trying one last time, my parents would love to host you both for dinner sometime. Dad makes an amazing— I'm sure he does, she interrupted, not looking up from her plate. Though I'm afraid I'm quite particular about where I dine. Years of refinement, you understand. I saw the hurt flash across Will's face before he could hide it. That was it. I'd had enough. Mum, stop it, I snapped. Will's family owns 3 successful restaurants now. They employ 50 people. Aaliyah, she cut me off, her voice sharp as glass. A lady never raises her voice in public. I stood up, my napkin falling to the floor. Then it's a good thing I never wanted to be your kind of lady. Will stood with me, his hand finding the small of my back. My father finally looked up from his menu. Confusion etched on his face as if he'd just tuned into a movie halfway through. Alea Marie Warner, sit down this instant, my mother hissed. No, I said simply. We're leaving. When you're ready to treat my fiancé with respect, you can call me. As we walked out, I heard my sister Jasmine's voice behind us, speaking into her phone. Mum always knew how to ruin a party. In the car, Will took my hand again. You okay? I looked at my ring, the one he'd spent months designing, the one that told our story in silver and stone. Yeah, I said, but this is just the beginning. I had no idea then how right I was or how much worse things would get before they got better. But that night, watching my mother's carefully constructed world of appearances begin to crack, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Free. 6 months later, I stood in the church's antechamber, watching my mother wage war with a flower arrangement. The wedding rehearsal was supposed to start in 10 minutes, but she'd spent the last hour fixing everything the coordinator had done. These roses are salmon, not coral, she snapped at the florist. It completely throws off the aesthetic I specified. Will's mother Evelyn stood quietly in the corner, her hands clasped together. She'd offered to help 3 times already, but Mum had dismissed her with increasingly thin patience. "Mum, please," I said. "The flowers are beautiful. We need to start the rehearsal." "Beauty is in the details, Alea," she replied, yanking out another rose. "Something Will's lovely family might learn to appreciate." I saw Evelyn's shoulders tense, but she maintained her dignity. Will had warned me his parents were close to their breaking point with my mother's behaviour, but they were trying for me. The rehearsal itself was a masterclass in passive-aggressive warfare. Mum repositioned everyone multiple times, tutted at Will's father Rocky for his casual attire — he was wearing a perfectly nice suit — and made 3 separate comments about the quaint nature of having the reception at the Jenkins restaurant. "Perhaps we could still book the country club for the actual day," she whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I know people." "The restaurant is perfect," I insisted, squeezing Will's hand as we practiced our walk down the aisle, "and the garden will be beautiful." "If you say so, dear," she sighed, "though I do wish you'd reconsider the seating arrangement. Mixing your father's colleagues with Will's family friends might be awkward." Rocky finally spoke up, his voice level but firm. "Mrs. Warner, my family friends include 2 state senators and a federal judge. They'll manage just fine." Mum's face flushed red. I could see her recalculating her approach, but the damage was done. At the rehearsal dinner, things went from bad to catastrophic. The wine was flowing, and Mum's filter was slipping. She clinked her glass for attention, standing with the practiced poise of someone who'd spent decades at charity galas. "I'd like to say a few words about our lovely couple," she began, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "When Alea first told me about Will, I must admit I had my concerns. After all, we always want the best for our children, don't we?" The room grew quiet. Will's hand tightened on his fork. "But Will has proven to be resourceful. Self-made, as they say. And while it's not the match I might have chosen — you're marrying beneath you, darling, let's be honest — I suppose love conquers all." The silence that followed was deafening. I watched Will's parents stand up slowly, their chairs scraping against the floor. Evelyn's eyes met mine, filled with tears. "I thought you were different," she said quietly. "I thought you were better than this. But you're just like her, aren't you? Sitting there letting her say these things." "Evelyn, no, I started to stand, but she was already walking away, Rocky's arm around her shoulders. Will looked at me, his face a mask of disappointment and hurt. "I need some air," he said, following his parents. My mother sat back down, smoothing her napkin, as if nothing had happened. "Well, they're certainly proving my point about class, aren't they?" "Stop it," I whispered, my hands shaking. "Just stop." "Alea," she said sharply, "don't make a scene." But I was done caring about scenes. I stood up, my chair falling backward with a crash. "You've made enough scenes for both of us, Mum, for my entire life." I ran after Will and his family, but they were already gone. The parking lot was empty except for my sister Jasmine, smoking a cigarette in the shadows. "Well," she said, exhaling smoke into the night air, "that was quite a show. Mum always did know how to make an exit." "This isn't funny, Jazz." "No," she agreed, dropping her cigarette and crushing it under her heel. "But it is inevitable. Did you really think this would end any other way?" I stood there in the dark, watching the taillights of Will's family car disappear into the distance, and felt my carefully planned future crumbling around me. But somewhere beneath the pain, a small voice whispered that maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe it was just the beginning of something else entirely. The note from Evelyn was waiting on my doorstep the next morning, tucked under a small potted plant, one she'd grown herself from her garden. 3 lines that made my heart sink. "We raised our son to know his worth. I'm sorry we were wrong about you. The wedding is off." I called Will 17 times. He answered on the 18th with 2 words: "We need space." The silence after he hung up was deafening. I sat on my kitchen floor, still in yesterday's clothes, when a memory hit me like a thunderbolt. Last Christmas, my grandmother Cecilia had pulled me aside during family dinner, her eyes sharp despite her age. Your mother, she'd said, watching Lillian hold court at the dinner table, wasn't always the queen she pretends to be. Remember that, dear? I dismissed it as another of Grandma's cryptic comments, but now. An hour later, I was pulling into her driveway. Cecilia opened the door before I could knock, wearing her signature floral house dress and a knowing smile. "Took you long enough," she said, ushering me inside. "I heard about the rehearsal dinner. Tea?" "Grandma, what did you mean about Mom, about her not always being—" "A stuck-up pain in everyone's behind?" Cecilia cackled, pouring tea into delicate cups. "Oh, honey, sit down, this is going to be good." She disappeared into her study and returned with a dusty photo album. "Your mother likes to pretend life began when she married your father, but there's so much more to that story." The photos showed a different Lillian, younger, harder-edged, wearing clothes that would make current-day Mom faint in horror. "That's her at 16, Cecilia pointed, "before she became Lillian Warner." "What do you mean, became?" Cecilia's eyes twinkled. "Your mother wasn't born a Warner. That name was bought, just like everything else she pretends came naturally." "Bought? How?" "Your father's family had money, influence, the perfect escape route for a girl with complications." She sipped her tea carefully. "Have you ever wondered why there are no photos of your mother before she met your father? Why we never talk about her teenage years?" My hands shook as I turned pages. Mum always said she was focused on her studies. "Studies?" Cecilia laughed so hard she nearly spilled her tea. "Oh, she was studying something all right, but it wasn't books. Grandma, please, I need to know." She leaned forward, her voice dropping. "There was a boy, Rick Steele, working class, just like Will's family. Your mother was wild about him, until—" "Until what?" "Until the consequences came calling." Cecilia stood, walking to an old secretary desk in the corner. "I kept everything. Your mother thinks she burned it all, but I've always believed in insurance policies." She returned with a manila envelope, aged and worn at the edges. "Before you open this, ask yourself if you're ready. Truth is a weapon, Alea. Once fired, you can't call the bullet back." I thought about Will's face last night, about his mother's tears, about every time my mother had made them feel small. "I'm ready." Inside were legal documents, newspaper clippings, and a birth certificate that made my blood run cold. This can't be real. "Oh, it's real. Your mother had a baby at 16, gave it up, changed her name, and reinvented herself as the perfect society wife. Rick tried to fight it, but your grandfather's money bought a lot of silence." My phone buzzed, a text from Mum. "I expect you at brunch tomorrow. We need to discuss damage control." "She's still trying to control everything," I whispered. "Because control is all she has," Cecilia said. "Strip that away." A knock at the door interrupted us. Cecilia's housekeeper answered it, then came to the study looking confused. "Ma'am, there's a man here, says his name is Rick Steele, says he's been waiting 30 years for this conversation." I looked at Grandma, who smiled like a cat who'd finally caught her mouse. "Well," she said, settling back in her chair, "isn't this going to be interesting?" My hands clutched the birth certificate, my mother's carefully constructed lies crumbling between my fingers. For the first time, I understood exactly how to fight back. Rick Steele looked nothing like I'd imagined. He wore a crisp business suit and carried himself with quiet confidence. His eyes, startlingly similar to my mother's, fixed on the birth certificate in my hands. "So you found it," he said, accepting Cecilia's invitation to sit. I always wondered if someone would. "Did you know?" I asked. "All these years, did you know about us? About me?" He nodded slowly. "Your grandmother kept me updated. From a distance, of course. Your mother's lawyers made sure of that." Cecilia pulled more boxes from her study. "Show her, Rick. Show her everything." The next 2 hours were a crash course in my mother's carefully buried past. Photos spilled across the table. My mother in a waitress uniform, Rick in mechanic's coveralls, both of them laughing outside a diner. "We were just kids," Rick said, touching one photo gently. "Working at the same strip mall. She was saving for community college. I was apprenticing at the garage." "What happened?" She got pregnant. Her parents, your grandparents, they had other plans for her. When the baby came, they gave it up for adoption, Cecilia finished. Closed adoption. Then they arranged for her to meet your father at a debutante ball, of all things. Paid for a new wardrobe, new name, new everything. Rick pulled out court documents. I tried to fight it, wanted to marry her, raise our child together, but her father's lawyers buried me in paperwork, threatened to ruin my family's business. The baby, I whispered. Do you know? A boy, Rick said softly. I have a private investigator's report. He's a doctor now in Seattle. Happy, successful. Never knew about any of this. My phone buzzed again. Will, I ignored it. Why are you here now? I asked Rick. Because your grandmother called. Said you might need this information. Said your mother was doing to your fiancé what her parents did to me. I spread the documents across the table. Legal name change papers, adoption records, old newspaper clippings about the Warner family's charitable work with troubled youth. She erased you, I said, completely reinvented herself, and spent the rest of her life terrified someone would discover the truth, Cecilia added. Why do you think she's so obsessed with appearances, with marrying into the right families? Rick leaned forward. Look, I made peace with this years ago, built my own life, my own success. But when Cecilia told me about your wedding, about how your mother was treating your fiancé's family... History repeating itself, Cecilia murmured. My phone buzzed a third time. Mum. Brunch is non-negotiable. The wedding can still be saved if you follow my lead. I looked at Rick. Would you be willing to help me? With what? Breaking my mother's perfect facade, making her face what she did, not just to you, but to everyone she's looked down on. He studied me carefully. You sure about this? It won't just hurt her. Your whole family already hurts, I said. Every day watching her tear down good people because they don't fit her manufactured image. Will's family deserves better. You deserved better. Cecilia clapped her hands. Finally, someone with spine in this family. I'll help, Rick said, but we do this right. I've got copies of everything. Photos, letters, legal papers, and I've got recordings of her father admitting to the cover-up, was saving them for my memoir. You wrote a memoir? He smiled. Not yet. Been waiting for the right ending. My phone buzzed one last time. Will again. My mum's really hurt. Dad says we need to talk about what kind of family we're marrying into. I texted back, You're right, but not for the reasons you think. Give me 3 days. Looking up at Rick and Cecilia, I felt a strange calm settle over me. I need to make some calls. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. Rick nodded. What's your plan? The wedding's still on, I said, but not the one my mother planned. It's time for a different kind of ceremony. Cecilia raised her teacup in a toast. To truth? To consequences, I replied, and started dialing numbers. I found my mother in her sunroom, arranging flowers as if the world hadn't shifted on its axis. She barely looked up when I entered, just continued pruning roses with surgical precision. You missed brunch, she said coolly. We had important matters to discuss. I dropped the manila envelope on her pristine white table. A few photos slipped out. Young Lillian in her waitress uniform, arm in arm with Rick. The pruning shears clattered to the floor. Where did you get those? Her voice shook for the first time in my memory. Grandma Cecilia's quite the archivist. Rick says hello, by the way. She sank into a chair, her perfectly manicured hands trembling. Your grandmother had no right. No right, I laughed. Like you had no right to treat Will's family like dirt, to call them beneath us? That's different, she snapped. I was protecting you. From what? Love? Happiness? A family that actually cares about more than appearances? She stood abruptly, reaching for the envelope. I pulled it away. What do you want? She demanded. I want you to apologize to Will's family, to mean it, to treat them with respect. Or what? You'll destroy this family? Everything I built? You mean everything you faked? I pulled out the birth certificate. Does Dad know? About the baby? About how his family bought you a new identity? Stop it, her voice cracked. You have no idea what it was like. 16, pregnant, working for minimum wage. Rick couldn't provide the life I deserved. The life you deserved, I stared at her. Or the life you wanted. Both! She grabbed her wine glass, nearly spilling it. I did it all for you girls, so you'd never have to struggle like I did. No, you did it for yourself, and now you're doing to Will what your parents did to Rick. She straightened her spine, mask sliding back into place. If you show those documents to anyone, I'll cut you off. No inheritance, no connections, nothing. Funny, I said, how you think that matters to me. Don't be naive, Alia. Money matters, status matters. Ask Rick, he learned that lesson the hard way. Actually, Rick owns 3 automotive franchises now. He's quite successful. No thanks to you. Her face paled. He's... what? Worth more than Dad, actually. Turns out hard work beats bought status. She lunged for the envelope again. I held it higher. Last chance, Mum. Fix this with Will's family. Show them genuine respect, or these documents show up at the wedding. You wouldn't dare. Try me. I learned from the best how to destroy someone's carefully constructed image. She paced the sunroom, heels clicking on marble. If you wreck this wedding, don't come crying back to me. That's your answer? More threats? It's my answer to blackmail, she spat. You're just like him, Rick, thinking emotions matter more than position. My phone buzzed. Will's message made my heart stop. Dad told me about your mum's comment. I can't marry you knowing your silence means agreement. I showed her the text. See what your position costs. The man I love thinks I agree with you. Then perhaps he's not the man for you, she said coldly. There are better matches, more suitable. Like Rick was unsuitable. She slapped me. The sound echoed through the sunroom, scattering birds from the feeder outside. We both stood frozen, her handprint burning on my cheek. Get out, she whispered. Gladly. I gathered the envelope. But remember, you had a chance to fix this, to be better. You chose this outcome. At the door, I turned back. You know what's funny? Will's family, despite everything, would have loved you. Actually loved you, not just tolerated you at charity galas. But you couldn't risk being real with them, could you? She didn't answer, just stared out at her perfect garden, perfect walls, perfect prison of her own making. Walking to my car, I called Rick. She chose war, I said. Then war it is, he replied. I'll see you at the wedding. The sun was setting behind my mother's mansion, casting long shadows across her immaculate lawn. By this time next week, those shadows would be the least of her darkness. The church was packed. My mother had invited half the city's elite, carefully excluding Will's family and friends. She stood at the entrance, greeting guests with practiced charm, pretending everything was perfect. I watched from the bridal suite as Rick slipped in through the side door, taking a seat in the back row. Nobody noticed him, just another well-dressed guest among hundreds. Are you sure about this? Jasmine asked, adjusting my veil. It's not too late to just call it off. It's been too late for 30 years, I replied. The wedding march began. My father appeared at the door, looking uncertain. Ready, sweetheart? Actually, Dad, there's something you should know. Don't, he said softly. Your grandmother, she told me everything years ago. I just never had the courage to confront your mother. I stared at him. You knew? Why do you think I've been so distant, living with that kind of lie? He straightened my veil. Do what you need to do. The doors opened. Every head turned as we started down the aisle. My mother beamed from the front row, triumph written across her face. She thought she'd won. The minister began the ceremony. I barely heard the words, watching the side door. Right on cue, it opened silently. Will stepped in, followed by his parents. They stood at the back, unnoticed by the crowd. If anyone knows any reason why these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace. I stepped forward. Actually, I have something to say. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. My mother's smile froze. Before I say I do, there's something my mother should say first. I turned to face her. Mum, would you like to tell everyone who you really are, or should I? She stood, face rigid. Alea, don't you dare! Rick, I called out, would you join us? He walked down the aisle, each step echoing in the sudden silence. My mother's face went chalk white. Hello, Lillian, he said quietly. It's been a while. I pulled the birth certificate from my bouquet, unfolded it carefully. 30 years, to be exact, since you gave up your son and bought yourself a new life. The crowd erupted in whispers. My mother gripped her seat, knuckles white. You see, I continued, voice carrying through the church, my mother wasn't born into privilege. She worked as a waitress, fell in love with a mechanic, got pregnant at 16, but that didn't fit her plans. Stop this immediately, she hissed. So she let her parents buy her a new identity, erased her past, abandoned her baby, all so she could marry into the right family. I looked at Will's parents, and now she's trying to destroy another family for the same reason, because they remind her of what she really is. You ungrateful, she started to rise. I have proof, I announced. Photos, documents, recordings of Grandpa admitting to the cover-up. Would anyone like to see? The whispers grew louder. I saw phones coming out, society matrons typing furiously. But here's the real irony, I continued. The man she rejected, the one she thought was beneath her, he built his own empire, without lying, without erasing who he was, while you, Mum, you're still hiding, still pretending. Rick stepped forward. Your grandson's a doctor now, Lillian. Successful, happy, loved. Everything you could have had if you'd chosen truth over appearance. My mother swayed slightly. Dad caught her arm, but his face was hard. Will, I called out. He stepped forward, his parents beside him. I'm not saying I do today, not until we start fresh, with truth, all of it. Evelyn moved first, walking straight to me. You did this for us. For everyone who's ever been judged beneath someone else. For truth. The church erupted in chaos. My mother fled through the side door, her social circle dissolving into frenzied gossip. Jasmine followed her, shooting me a look of pure hatred. But Will walked up to me, took my hands. You could have just told me, he said softly. I needed everyone to see, to understand. I squeezed his hands. I'm sorry it had to be this way. He looked at his parents, then at Rick, then back at me. So, when do you want to try this wedding thing again? First, I said, let's have dinner, all of us, at your parents' restaurant, no more hiding who we are. The truth had cost me a wedding, but as I walked out with Will and our families, all of them, I knew it had bought me something far more valuable, freedom. The aftermath hit like a tsunami. By evening, my mother's carefully curated social media accounts were flooded with unfollows. Her country club friends suddenly had prior commitments for their standing lunch dates. The society pages that once featured her charity work now ran headlines like Socialite's Secret Past Exposed. I found her sitting alone in her darkened living room, still in her wedding outfit. Come to gloat? She asked, not looking up. No, I came to return this. I placed her wedding album on the table. Found it while getting my things from the house. She flipped it open, staring at photos of her perfect day. I gave you everything, she whispered. The best schools, the right connections. You gave me shame, I corrected. Taught me to judge people by their bank accounts instead of their hearts. And look where heart got me at 16. She slammed the album shut. Pregnant, alone, working double shifts at a diner. You weren't alone. Rick would have trapped me in that life. She stood up, swaying slightly. You think I regret my choice? That baby got a better life. I got a better life. At what cost? The doorbell rang. Through the window I saw Rick standing on the porch. No, my mother breathed. You didn't. He deserves to say his piece. She ran for the stairs, but I caught her arm. Mum, stop running. Just this once, face the truth. Rick entered without waiting. He looked around the mansion with a sad smile. Nice place, Lily. Worth it? Don't call me that, she snapped. That's not my name anymore. Right, you're Lillian now, the perfect society wife. He pulled out an old photo. Remember this? Our first date at Jimmy's diner? Her hands trembled as she took it. We were children. We were in love. Love doesn't pay bills. No, Rick laughed. My company grossed $40 million last year, built from nothing but hard work and honesty, something you wouldn't understand. The doorbell rang again. This time it was Will and his parents. What is this? My mother demanded. Some kind of intervention? This is family, Will said quietly. Real family, the kind that accepts you, flaws and all. Evelyn stepped forward. We came to invite you to dinner at our restaurant. My mother's laugh was hollow. After what I said about you, what I did. Because of what you did, Rocky replied. Because we've all made mistakes. The question is, do we learn from them? I don't need your pity. Good, Rick said, because this isn't pity, it's a chance to be real, maybe for the first time in 30 years. She sank onto the sofa. I don't know how to be real anymore. Start with sorry, I suggested. Work up from there. The silence stretched. Finally, she looked at Will's parents. I am sorry for everything I said, everything I implied. And, I prompted. She turned to Rick. And I'm sorry for what I did to you. To our son. His name is Michael, Rick said gently. He's asked about you. Her head snapped up. You told him? He found me years ago, wanted medical history, but he'd like to meet you if you're willing to be honest with him. Tears, real ones, not the practiced ones she used at charity events, rolled down her face. I don't deserve— No, Rick agreed, but he deserves the chance to know his mother, the real one. Will took my hand. The restaurant's open late, Dad's making his famous lasagna. My mother looked around at all of us, her carefully constructed walls crumbling. I wouldn't know how to act. That's the point, Evelyn said. Just act like yourself, whoever that is. My mother stood slowly, wiped her eyes. Could I change first? Into what? I asked. Something designer? Something appropriate? She walked to her room and returned wearing jeans. Actual jeans I didn't even know she owned. Into something real, she said quietly. As we walked out, she paused by the wedding album. I spent so long trying to erase who I was, I forgot how to be anyone at all. Well, Rick said, holding the door, tonight's a good time to start remembering. We left the perfect house, with its perfect facade, and drove to a family restaurant where the tablecloths didn't match and the love was authentic. Sometimes I realized the best revenge isn't destruction, it's resurrection. The garden at Will's family restaurant bloomed with fairy lights and wildflowers, nothing like the structured arrangements my mother would have chosen. But as I stood before our gathered families, holding Will's hands, the imperfect beauty felt exactly right. Ready? Will whispered. I glanced at the front row. My mother sat between Rick and Michael, her posture relaxed in a way I'd never seen before. She wore a simple blue dress, her usual diamonds replaced by a single pendant, a gift from her grandson. More than ready, I replied. The minister smiled. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today. This time, when he asked if anyone objected, the silence felt peaceful rather than tense. My mother caught my eye and nodded slightly, her small smile genuine. The couple has written their own vows, the minister announced. Will squeezed my hands. Alea, I fell in love with your strength long before I understood how much you'd need it. You taught me that real love isn't about fitting into someone else's picture. It's about painting your own. I promise to keep creating that masterpiece with you, messy brushstrokes and all. I blinked back tears. Will, you showed me that family isn't about perfection. It's about acceptance, about being brave enough to be real, even when real is complicated. I promise to always choose truth with you, no matter how difficult the path. As we exchanged rings, I heard my mother's quiet sniffle. Beside her, Michael offered her a tissue, a simple gesture that spoke volumes about healing. By the power vested in me, the minister began, but Jasmine suddenly stood up. Wait, she called out. Everyone froze. I need to say something. She walked to the front, hands shaking. I've been awful. To Will's family, to Alea, to everyone, because I thought being like Mom, the old Mom, meant being strong. But watching her change, watching her choose truth over image. I was wrong. I'm sorry. Rocky stood up. Come here, kid. He hugged her, and just like that, another wall crumbled. The minister cleared his throat. Shall we continue? Please, Will and I said together. Then, by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. The garden erupted in cheers as Will dipped me into a kiss that tasted like promise and joy. At the reception, my father clinked his glass. A toast, he announced, to truth, to change and to love that breaks down walls instead of building them. My mother stood next to him. And to second chances, she added softly. Sometimes the long way home is the right way. I watched her later, laughing with Evelyn over wedding cake, swapping stories with Rick about their diner days, showing Michael old photos she'd kept hidden for decades. The society maven was gone, replaced by someone real, someone who finally seemed at peace. Penny for your thoughts? Will wrapped his arms around me. Just thinking about karma, I said, how sometimes it's not about punishment. Sometimes it's about restoration. Speaking of restoration, Rick appeared beside us. Your mother agreed to help at the diner's anniversary celebration next month. Said something about remembering how to make the world's best apple pie. Never thought I'd see the day, Will chuckled. Never thought I'd see any of this. I gestured to our blended, beautifully imperfect family scattered across the garden. But here we are. The night wound down with dancing under the stars. My mother and Rick shared a bittersweet dance, not of regret, but of acceptance. Michael danced with both his parents, bridging a 30-year gap with grace. Jasmine taught Rocky's signature move to the whole wedding party. As Will and I swayed to the last song, I caught sight of Grandma Cecilia, watching from her seat, looking supremely satisfied. Mission accomplished? I asked her. She winked. Truth has a way of setting everything right, dear, even if the path there is a bit dramatic. Will pulled me closer. So, Mrs. Jenkins, any regrets about how this all played out? I looked around at our garden wedding, so different from the cathedral affair my mother originally planned, at the mismatched tables filled with genuine laughter, at the families woven together by choice rather than obligation. Not a single one, I said, and kissed him under the stars. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone's perfect facade. Sometimes it's about giving them the courage to crack it themselves, letting the light in through the broken places until they remember who they really are.